Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dominions 5. In this episode, I'd like to go over this game and give you and share with you some of my overall thoughts. I have just finished recording the last few episodes. This game actually ended maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I was a bit busy. And so I was finally able to record the last few episodes. So there are a few things that I'd like to talk about in this sort of recap. And of course, so I'm going to try to squeeze all of this into one kind of long, rambly episode. And I'm looking forward to reading your comments, and I'll try to reply in the comments to, to what questions you might have or criticisms you might have. So let's talk about a few things. So I think I talked enough in the last episode about the details of these two battles, right? This was a very frustrating loss underwater because I really should have been able to kill it with the flesh eater. I have one flesh eater here, and then I had another flesh eater on a dude somewhere. Two flesh eaters means that those two guys would not have routed, and they just would have stayed there forever. And basically, the fight would have been the same now. They would have been berserkered, so maybe a bit more fatigued with quickness. But at the end of the day, it didn't my guys didn't need. They woke up eventually in the end and just killed everything. So I'm certain that the fight would have worked if I had thought to put the flesh eaters on. So that's really unfortunate. Now, one interesting thing that's come up is, I say it's come up. So I've watched Lucid's Let's Play of this series so far. Not until the end, though, until about turn 30, 32, 33. And so there's a lot of interesting diplomacy, from his side that I'm interested. But one thing that was obvious is that he had no, and probably many of the other players didn't have an understanding of what was going on in this lake. And people assumed that I had this throne, is what I think is happening. And I'll know more when we do the podcast. I think people assumed that I had this throne in my pocket. In other words, I had cleared it, I controlled it, but I just hadn't claimed it, and was holding on to that to try to do a throne victory. Now, that might have been a good strategy. There's a couple of issues. One issue is that I don't have any mobile Holy Threes. So that means I would have had to keep my prophet with a ring of underwater breathing here, or ready to claim it. So that is one issue with that. I can't claim thrones easily because my pretender is a monolith, so I have to teleport him around if I want to use him to claim stuff. So that's one issue with that. From my point of view, though, I did not. Although I could have beat the Indies and taken the throne, for most of the game, Satis seemed, or at least in the early game, so Satis can go underwater much. He can go underwater with skeletons and just do skeleспam, and he had taken this province pretty early. If with him controlling this province, it would have been easy for Satis to just capture this province once I had cleared it from the Indies. And I would have had to keep a presence here, like a significant presence here, to defend this throne. And I didn't have that presence. Now, I'm trying to think, one thing that just occurred to me is, how could I have gotten a throne castle up there? And there is one in Blood, and I'm not sure if it can be used underwater, so I just want to look this up quickly. It's called like 5 something seconds. Actually, I could look at the cost is pretty steep. 3 red seconds. Yeah, so no, I could not. And it can't be cast underwater anyways. So this is a way to create a fort instantly. I had the Blood Slaves and the Path, but I didn't have Blood 8. I wouldn't have had it in time, and in any case, it can't be used underwater. So the only way to do it would have been with nature, and I would have had to forge a lot of, I guess I could have teleported the monolith in, built a lab, and then there's like a grow underwater fort in Conjuration. I didn't have a lot of nature gems, so that would have been really an epic undertaking. to actually defend this throne underwater from the constant threat of just Satis skeleton spamming it, right? And so, I mean, obviously, I can defend against skeleton spam with like an army, or thugs, but then it means that thug has to stay underwater here, and that's just a pain, right? So that's why, from my perspective, I never took this throne early. I was always ready to take it back if I needed to, like I tried to do at the end there with, a few thugs with underwater gear. But that's why we never went for it early on. I guess while we're on the subject of Diplo, another thing that came up while watching Lucid's Let's Play, who's playing Micklin, is really interesting. In the mid-game, or for me in the mid-game, I remember I had asked if I could take some of these water provinces to go get these islands from Midgard, and Lucid said no. And so a few things. First of all, I realized at the beginning, I remember not even realizing there was a second island. There's something about the color scheme in this map. So this is a beautiful map, by the way. I think it was Das who kind of not like photoshopped it, basically, I want to say, but who made it. And it is beautiful. However, my one criticism is that the color scheme is a little too uniform. It's a little hard to tell the water provinces from the islands now, and from the land. Now, obviously, look, this is trees, right? Like, I should have known. But, yeah, in my mind, this was land and everything else was water because of the blue, right? So early on, I just thought of this as only one island that I wanted to get. So that's one little detail. But anyways, what I discovered is that Lucid interpreted my asking for this as me trying to get a path to attack Pythium's big throne here. And he thought I had a big pile of giants over here. I'd just taken it from Midgard, and he thought I wanted to take my giants underwater and then up here. And so that's really interesting because that never crossed my mind because, guys, it's really hard to take giants under. You need a lot of water breathing items to do that. Water breathing is based on the size of the troop. And so, an item might have, like, the manual of water breathing gives you 50 water breathing points, but you have to divide that by 4 because the giants are size 4. So that only gives you, 12 giants or 11, 12 giants per item. 12 giants is not a lot. I mean, it's okay, but I need to, to win it, and Pythium would defend this with his life, right? So I would need maybe 20 or 30 giants just to siege it down in a reasonable amount of time. And then, I want to have my mages, right? My strength here is not so much early on, I guess sacred giants are always good. But, I want to have my communion and my skeleton spam. So that's a lot of water gems. And I just never had that kind of water gem income. I struggled at the end to get enough, rings of water breathing just from my thugs and my mages. I can't imagine having had enough water income to forge enough water breathing items to get me across. Now, I guess there is there are some that give more, like the orb. I guess it's construction 6 or 10. There are some that give I think up to 100 water breathing. Anyways, I think strategically I can see that play. The reality is that I never could have pulled it off because I did not have the water income to make those items to get my guys across underwater. But the effect of that diplomatically is that made Micklin, and he of course sent messages to other people, much more suspicious of me, right? So in a multiplayer game, you don't want people to think of you as a threat. Now, if you're too weak, then people will just want to attack you. But you don't want people to think that they need to worry about you. And later on, it didn't impact the game too much. But that is something that kind of went against me, right? In that it alerted people to my possibly trying to win or get, a throne victory. I wish I could have pulled this off, but it was not really realistic. It was not really feasible. Okay, that's something I wanted to talk about. I talked about this. Yeah, let's talk about Miklin, I guess. So that was a hilarious last fight with the monolith. You know, I'm not even so. Miklin attacked me one turn earlier than he should have, according to the nap. But honestly, at the end of the game, when it's victory or nothing, that can kind of happen often in these games. The truth is, I had decided as soon as he had announced that he was going to end the nap, I had kind of decided that I was not going to invest. I was not going to drag more troops down here to try to defend it. So because logistically it just would have been too much of a pain. So I had kind of made that decision. So the one extra turn would not have changed too much. It would have given me more time to plan like assassinations and things like that. And in hindsight, if I was going to prepare for that, something I could have done is, so I had one Blood 5 guy. I think I had another Blood 3 or 2. I could have forged a few more Blood boosters and maybe done some Blood empowers so that I could have had 2 or 3 Infernal Disease casters ready to go for this attack. That could have been something that we had done. That would significantly have increased the odds of us getting his Holy 3 guy. And if we get his Divine Blessing guy, then that could actually make the difference in that fight. That combined with assassinations, there was still a non-zero chance that I won that. Now, the monolith, the mono drop, independently is a hilarious outcome. And that could have, maybe just a mono drop alone might have been enough to defeat them. Now, of course, I lost the monolith. I did have quite a few priests. It wouldn't have taken too long to bring him back. And the truth is, I didn't actually need the bless to take this from Satis, because Satis is pretty weak. So that wouldn't have set me back too long. I feel like I'm starting to lose my voice here, but we'll keep going. So Miklin, it was just an interesting end. It was going to be a limited fight for this throne. Now, I chatted briefly with Lucid on Discord afterwards, and he pointed out now that he had lost all the Otzvals, he might not have been able to keep this from me, and that's true. Except I would have had to put together something with the thugs and with a few giants. But he's actually right. I probably could have taken this back from him. Because I'm pretty sure all his army is up here in this area. So given that he lost everything on the monolith, I probably would have been able to take this back. And in that situation, right, we can imagine, like, if I had successfully blocked this, then we would be sitting on 1, 2 in a few turns, 3, 4 points, and then maybe I get this back, so 5 points. So I think we definitely could have been in contention for a victory if horrors had started to fall, right? Not guaranteed for sure, but we would have been in contention. We would be in the 4 or 5 range. Pythium would still be on 5, but maybe somebody would wrest this throne from him. Miklin, in that case, would be in the running because he would have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. So it might have come down to that. Now, another thing about Miklin and in terms of diplomacy is, I came into this game around turn, 20 or something like that. And before that, the player who had played Utgard had kind of signed up. Early in the game, there was a bit of an alliance, a bit of a coalition formed against Miklin. And I think it was Das, who was playing Man, who was trying to spearhead this coalition. And his thinking was that, Miklin has this insane, crazy bless. He's super scary. We have to take him out early. And that's true in some ways, but if I had been playing Utgard from the beginning, I almost certainly would not have joined that coalition against Miklin. And the reason is that you have to think of the power curve, right? So Miklin with a crazy bless, an awake bless, is super strong in the early game, right? If you're doing a crazy bless, you're strong when you have a bunch of sacreds. So he's quite strong early, and then gets stronger up until the mid game, and then it can kind of start to fall off, right? Part of why it falls off is because his scales are such garbage to pay for that bliss that any other nation that has any moderate amount of scales is gonna their economy is gonna be way bigger than the guy who trashed his scales, right? And so you can just do more stuff. It also means, because his economy is struggling, it's harder for him to get out, mages and do research. He had garbage research. He just had a few key, and they were successful, but he only had a few key spells, right? We actually got a pretty decent amount of research done. In terms of my research, I think I shouldn't have pushed blood. Maybe I should have gone for alteration 7 instead. But that being said, we need to hit our research targets, and that's when we hit our power curve. So if we think of what Utgard's power curve is like, we have Sacred Giants. So Sacred Giants are great against some nations, right? Regen Giants are good against nations that have a hard time killing giants, and there are a lot of those. They're also great for expansion, right? Because indies can't kill Sacred Giants with regeneration. So you can expand early on, get a nice solid chunk of land. And then people are just, a lot of people just don't want to attack Sacred Giants. Mictland has no problem attacking Sacred Giants. In fact, if you watch Lucid's video, which I'm certain you have, and if you haven't, you should, he explicitly says this, like he would kill the giants, no problem. And he's absolutely right. So, Sacred Giants only have one attack per square. You got to think of it this way. Like, Mictland's Sacreds are uniquely designed to kill giants in a way, right? Because think about it. First of all, the ridiculous number of attacks per turn with the Quickness Bliss, right? It's like 6 per turn once the guy dies. And second of all, they're wasting no resources on useless things like armor, right? A giant is going to one-shot kill you no matter what. It does like 30 damage, okay? So it's going to kill you no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're like, I don't know, man or something, right? So for example, look, man sacreds have long swords. They're also very good against giants if you take a killy bless. You often might not. You might take an incidental bless like strength or something like that. And they wouldn't be half bad against giants. But you're wasting, they cost like so many resources and gold on the crossbow and on the heavy armor, completely useless against giants. The giant's still going to one-shot the warden, right? It doesn't matter, okay? Which is, the problem with that's why it's hard to fight against giants, is because what you want are cheap throwaway units that hit hard, right? And that's exactly what Mictland has. So in the early game, as Utgard, you want to run away. You don't want to fight Mictland. You want to have peace with Mictland. So I would not, and in fact, there was a battle, I think, early on, an intentional bump, I think, on Mictland's part that, led to Utgard losing a bunch of giants. So I was super happy to have peace, with Mictland when I joined. Now, that being said, so when would have been a good time to attack? So there's like a dual power curve. So Mictland is really strong in the early game because I'm trying to draw like a graph here with my mouse, but you probably can't see it. So Mictland has like a strong early game with the bless that are going to kill my giants, right? My key research, my power curve gets a huge spike once I get my communions and Skelespam online, and also when I can do my fatigue spells like Rigor Mortis, Grip of Winter. I unfortunately never got any Earth access this game. I eventually got Enchantresses here pretty late, but I never had any Earth income. So with Earth, you could do Curse of Stones, which is also good. A fatigue play with the chaff that goes with it and the Skelespam could take on Mictland for a while until they get 100 Ocelots and attack you with them, right? But even so, like 100 Ocelots, now I don't know if I could have taken, it's an interesting question. If he had his massive army here, plus his massive army, whatever it was that was fighting Ulm, versus my combined massive army, that'd be a beautiful thing to see. And I don't know who would come out on top. I think I could have enough meat shield around my mages to last long enough to get my key spells online, and after that, I don't think he could kill me. But that's maybe a theory crafting thing that we'd have to figure out. So there's a dip in the Mictlan power curve before he has too many ocelots, where if I had to fight him, that would have been the time, right? So this is when I hit enchantment like 6, and I've just gotten rigor mortis relief. Maybe I can do grip of winter as well. And then you just go to town, right? He might have a few ocelots, but it's not, too much. That would have been the time for if I had to fight Mictlan, right? So that's the thought that I wanted to get across. And also, as we saw with ocelots, like, there are other. Utgard is quite a strong nation. Blood is quite powerful. Mictlan also has blood. But, we used Infernal Disease very effectively, and we could have continued to do that. We also can Mind Hunt, so we have a lot of tools that could have messed with his logistics. And, now, one of Utgard's big strengths is the Scratty Thugs, and Thugs are not super great against really killy Sacreds, but I don't know, with the Vine Shields are pretty amazing, so that might have been, that might have worked. Anyways, so that is definitely something I wanted to touch on with respect to Mictlan, right? I would not have gone to war with Mictlan in the early game. I mean, unless it was a dog pile, I guess, right? But these coalitions tend to have a hard time sticking together, as this one did, right? It did implode. Yeah, so that's that. And by the way, I should say, or this is a good segue into the next thing I wanted to touch on is I think the way Lucid played Mictlan is great for this game setup. This was a 42. This was a super short game. No matter what, it wasn't going past 40. So trash your scales, right? Take a garbage, just trash your scales, get a Mega Bless, and go to town, right? If it's only 40 turns, you want the advantage to be in the early game, right? Taking scales in a 40-turn game is really questionable, now that I think about it. So that being said, if I had been playing from the start, would I have built this differently? I think I remember saying early on that, and here, why don't we go into, let's just go into like pretender design here. I think I remember early on saying that I would have built this monolith differently, and I was suggesting, so the build that we had here was, I guess, did we have blood? I don't think we did blood. No, we didn't have blood. So we had like fortitude, regeneration, and I guess magic weapons, magic resistance, something like that, right? And then I don't know, I guess 6 or 7. He was dormant, whatever. We had something like this. No, it was awake. Obviously, it had to be awake. Yeah, so it was an awake monolith, and I guess we went cold, and I don't know. I forget what the scales were, right? At first, I was criticizing a bit fortitude. I thought it wasn't. It might not have been like I might have gone for something weaker. Like maybe in some cases you might go fire shock. Although in this game, fire shock would not have been so useful. Shock would have been useful though. Actually, we could have been fighting Man and Midgard. But you could also do like strength, maybe some reinvig. You can add some blood surge if you wanted to. So I was giving different ideas, but those ideas are really only appropriate if this was like, if you wanted to, save on points to get better scales for a longer game. In this kind of a short game, like maybe you just go for like a ridiculous, like maybe we go into blood for like a ridiculous bless, right? So one thing, if you want to have super tanky dudes, like think about that last fight against the Ocelots, right? Blood Bond regen fortitude. Oh my god, that is really hard to kill. With enough defensive buffs and enough like body ethereal and stuff like that, that might have been able to stop the ocelots. So that's something to consider. But why stop there, right? Now I don't know if you do this on the obelisk. Maybe you do this on another chassis. Let's see. Do we have? Yeah, we have the Fountain of Blood. Maybe you do this on Fountain of Blood, but Blood Vengeance, right? Like go all the way, like trash the skills. Yeah, I think maybe you do this on. I'd have to see. I think it's cheaper. So let's see, we're at minus 412 because we have this astral stuff with 6 and minus 3. What if we do this just for fun? We don't need this. 7. Yeah, it's way cheaper on the. Oh well, 6. Whatever. Yeah, it's way cheaper here. Just trash those scales. Blood Vengeance, Regen Fortitude. So that's an MR check to take the damage that you dealt, right? So although, like, Miklin's Sacreds have, like, okay regen, but they do way more damage, right? And with all those attacks per turn, they would just explode themselves onto our guys, right? And maybe you don't even take Fortitude. Like, you can save some more points here on Earth, right? In fact, because this is I don't know, we could take some. I don't know. You could do. Maybe you do take Fortitude. I don't know. There's a lot. You can play with a lot of things. But Regen and Blood Vengeance and Fortitude, like that could have been a hilarious strategy to go for. So anyways, those were just some thoughts. Maybe if I had been, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I don't know if maybe there's like an Awake chassis here that would have been more fun. But yeah, I could have seen that with Blood Vengeance. That could have been really funny. Okay, let me just load the game again. We'll go like the second to the last turn, I guess, so we can click on our units more easily. So yeah, so those were I remember thinking about that, and I wanted to share it with you, my thoughts about how I would have designed it a little bit differently. What else is there to talk about? Well, our main war was against Midgard, and honestly, that went pretty well. That kind of went as I expected it would. And I don't think there's too much more to talk about in terms of that war. In terms of research, I think I touched on this. I wish I had, maybe at the end I should have gone Alteration 7 instead, but otherwise I was quite happy with what we had. I'm sure, oh yes, of course. Besides completely failing here, okay, by the way, so I've been talking about this, so here's one. And then the second one, I think, is on, like, this... where is it? It's, like, on the succubus here or something? Yeah, like the succubus has it for some reason, right? Unbelievable. What an idiot. So if... what was I going to say? Yes. So my biggest regret... obviously failing here. My second biggest regret was not getting Illwinter off. I really wanted to cast Illwinter. And that was like a goal for me in this game, like a mini game within the game. I really wanted, for role-playing it would have been fun. Now, generally speaking, casting a global screw you spell is not really advisable unless you're in a strong dominant position. Which we're not. I mean, we're in a strong position, but we're not in a dominant position. This would have been very questionable. And I didn't do it, but I would have done it anyways. I totally would have cast it. If I didn't need this guy to do, all these spells against Miklin. But I for sure would have cast it like this turn or the next one. So that's excuse me. So that's a regret of mine. But that is pretty much it. So I think we're gonna wrap this up. We managed to keep my ranting to just under half an hour. I hope you've enjoyed the series. It was a lot of fun playing it. I'm glad I was able to participate. I will be possibly uploading. I might upload another talkie episode. Once I finished watching a lot of the other Let's Plays from the other players' perspectives. Right now, I've only had the time to go through most of Lucid's, but even that one I haven't finished. So it'll be interesting. I'd love to hear others' perspective and there are things probably to respond to, right? But maybe I'll do that in the comments in other people's videos. Because sometimes you hear somebody say, "Oh, I thought Utgard was going to do this, but actually, I know that it was different." So that'll be that might be interesting to see. So I might do another video, but I might not. But there will be another video. Now, it depends where I will be, but when we record this podcast episode, if I'm doing it here from my PC, I'll record it and I'll upload it. But if not, if I'm just on my laptop, I might not be able to record it. So in that case, I'll just refer you guys to the other players' channels, because they'll a few of them are for sure going to post it up, going to post it on their channels. And if I'm unable to record it, then we'll just do that. And that's going to be it. I guess because I know that I'm going to upload this video very shortly, I should announce that I have just started. So I have there are a lot of games that I've played, and some of them are recorded. So there are a lot of games that I played in the past, and I was hoping to finish recording those series, but I've kind of run out of time to do them. A couple of them were really long games, like kind of all-nation type games. There was one with MA Man. There was one with MA Tianqi. I don't know if I ever... Like, that one was a long, long time ago. It was like a year ago. And I never quite finished recording it. And there was another one, which I referred to in this series, the one where I played Marverni against those Blood Nations. That was also an all-nations game. I recorded a lot of it, but I didn't quite have time to finish it. And I don't know, honestly, if I ever will. That being said, I'm currently playing in a few other games. There's one game, so obviously this game just wrapped up. I'm playing in a smaller Disciples game as Oceania. It's an early age game. That's sort of interesting. I'm not sure if I'll make a series out of it, but we'll see. I joined another All Nations game on a new sort of All Nations map. I'm playing as it's early age. I'm playing as early age Airmore. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure if I'll make a series out of it. The map is a little wonky, and so we'll have to see how that turns out. But I've also started. So I've just recently started 2 new games. They're not quite All Nations, but they're pretty large. Both are 20 players. One, they're both middle-age. One I'm playing as M.A. Ulm. So I've released on this channel already an Ulm. It was a short game. It was on the Panther Creator map, the sort of the Beautiful Planets map. And unfortunately, that game ended prematurely because I kind of got teamed up on by like these water nations, and there was a bit of a diplomacy fail on my part. But I wanted to give Ulm another try, so we're playing in that game. And I'm hoping to record that, but we'll see. And then I've also just joined, Lucid just started a new game he just started a Patreon, so go support him. And I think with the game started, like there are a few spots reserved for his Patreon, for his patrons, I guess. And then a few other open spots, and I also joined that game, and so that is also a pretty large game. It's a 20-player game. I'm playing as M.A. Tianqi. So I've already played. It was hard to choose which nation I wanted to play in that game. There were many nations were already picked. A lot of strong nations were still available, but I didn't want to pick a strong nations. I really wanted to do like Machaka, or like a pretty bad nation like that. But I really love Tianqi. I had a lot of fun playing them in that game a year ago, and I'm hoping to give them another whirl. So I'm almost certainly going to do a series on that game. Now, I don't know exactly when the videos might come up for that, but hopefully it won't be too long. So anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.